20 years ago, a reality TV series about a struggling promotion aired on Spike TV that, for better or worse, would go on to change the landscape of sports and pop culture. This is a retrospective of that series, its key players, and its lasting legacy. This is TUFtwenty.
TUFtwenty is brought to you by The Contrarians, a movie podcast where we are right and you're wrong. Be sure to subscribe to The Contrarians on your favorite podcatcher for access to this entire series, as well as Julio and Alex's most recent film follies. Our main website, wearethecontrarians.com, houses all of our past episodes as well.
You can find The Contrarians across social media under the handle @ContrarianPrime.
It's not just us, though. As for this 14-part journey of nostalgia and shame, we've got a championship corner.
I'm Joe Holbert, and for years I've discussed fake fighting on the internet. Now, however, I'm trying my hand at the real thing. Usually, you can find me at the Late Night Grim, but for this particular adventure, I'll be sitting under the Team Couture learning tree, providing insight to my fellow men of honor.
It's niche micro-celebrity Steve. You may know me from Twitter, the Songs with Friends podcast, or various scuffles in the world of professional wrestling. By the end of this journey, you are no doubt going to feel this, because this is the ultimate.
Now that the cage door is locked, let's get down to business.
Time to talk asparagus.
I'm afraid we may have peaked with the recaps of episodes on this one because the announcer, the narrator, informs us that Bobby lowered the hammer. And so I think that there's nowhere to go but down from here with the recaps. It is February 7th of 2005, and it's time to step inside the octagon once again as episode 4, On the Ropes of the Ultimate Fighter, aired. This being the only episode of the season to come off the heels of an actual pay-per-view. Joey, the 2 days before, on February 5th of 2005, UFC 51 from the Mandalay Bay was presented. Did a really good buy rate, too. And as you can imagine, the promotion was high for this new wacky reality show that they're doing.
Yes, I can imagine, certainly. It sounds like it would have been exhausting, actually, the promotion. Was that Tito and Vitor?
It was. Tito had headlined UFC 50, which Joe recapped for us on the first episode, in which he fought the Predator Patrick Cote in the main event. Do you know who he was supposed to fight originally? Cote was like a 48-hour replacement.
Yeah, I couldn't remember that. When I was saying it, I remembered that Cote was a step in. Who was the original fighter?
Guy Mesger. They were trying to continue on the Shamrock story.
Well, they would continue that story. They just had to wait a little minute. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it was just the break in case of emergency glass. Then let's put Ken back out there with Tito. But yeah, Tito Ortiz defeated Vitor Belfort by split decision in the main event. Famously, it's the fight where afterwards Tito jumped the cage and ran to the top of the arena and then back down again, and a show of solidarity with the people, or to show that he was in good shape. And then afterwards he called out Chuck and Ken Shamrock, resulting in, the bench clearing. Whoa, guys, calm down. Elsewhere on the show, Pete Sell choked out Phil Baroni, LOL. Andrei Arlovsky defeated Tim Sylvia by Achilles lock. That big dumb son of a bitch just lumbered over and had no defense for that. Evan Tanner defeated David Terrell for the then vacant middleweight title in one of the all-time great one-round fights. And Paul Buentello knocked out Justin Eilers in the opening.
Oh my God, Paul Buentello. Oh my goodness. That's a memory that I had not got back there for a while. My goodness.
Julio, Paul Buentello was a big fella and had a pretty good resume of knockouts. But for whatever reason, he decided that he was going to have a catchphrase. And his catchphrase was, "Don't fear me, fear the consequences." And I believe it was this fight, UFC 51 Super Saturday, in which he does his post-fight interview and he goes, "Don't fear me," and then points to the crowd as though he's expecting them to, like, if you smell what the Rock is cooking type shit.
Yes.
And it is, you could hear a rat piss on cotton when he does that. There's no reaction at all. And then it just comes back to him. He's like, "Yeah, fear the consequences."
And it dominated his reputation. He was a real fighter. He said he had some serious knockouts, but he was always known. I don't think fans now even remember or know of him, but he was always known as the consequences guy.
I saw him fight Stefan Struve live, and there was a part in the fight where Stefan Struve was like a 7-foot fighter, Julio. He went for like a flying knee, and Paul Buentello jumped in the air and punched him in midair and knocked him down with it. It was
it's a Street Fighter move.
It had the crowd in Memphis rocking, I'll tell you that right now. Point being here is that they did a buy rate of 100,000, a little bit over 100,000, which was on par with UFC 40, the famous Shamrock Ortiz won. So they're rolling. They're doing, okay. Like we said, the finances weren't there. They were hemorrhaging money, but they had a big audience here to plug their show and say, hey, on Monday, watch this crazy kid, Diego Sanchez, go to the doctor and ask for painkillers. Leading us in to this episode of The Ultimate Fighter, the Raw recap here. Oh, this was the one in Japan at the Saitama Super Arena, February 7th, 2005. We opened up with Chris Benoit defeating Chris Jericho in a submission match. You got to get some grappling in there for the Japanese crowd. Batista defeated Maven in 33 seconds. Tajiri and William Regal beat La Resistance to win the World Tag Team Championships in 4:10. I remember that was a cool moment for Tajiri. Yeah. Shawn Michaels defeated Ric Flair in 8 minutes and 30 seconds. Randy Orton defeated Tyson Tomko in 5:13. And then in a match that regularly gets clipped and shared by engagement accounts to this day, Triple H defeated Edge to retain the World Heavyweight Championship in 14:16. Steve, this is the one where like Triple H does like chain wrestling and was trying to like impress the Japanese crowd.
God bless 1978 NWA World Champion Triple H.
Joe, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's so fucking eye-rolling. So Julio, we talked about this before. The Japanese crowds react to different things than American crowds, and right. Triple H, being the fucking mark that he is, he's like trying to do this intricate like wrestling to make the crowd like clap for him, because he's certainly not an insecure person at all, Joe.
No, definitely not. That's never been his reputation. In fact, he just hates even being seen now, right? It's just horrifying. But yeah, I've only seen the match in clips because, as you said, it gets clipped once every like 3 days. So maybe one day I'll watch the whole thing. Probably not, but maybe.
I think this is enough revisiting 2005 for all of us.
Probably so. Yeah, I didn't want to say it, but you've said it for me. Probably so.
Is there an
Speaking
update,
of which,
is there an update on McMahon's health, Alec? Because that was a hell of a cliffhanger last episode.
Oh, his quads?
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about right now, and I was like, well, we don't have enough time for that. But I can't remember. He was an on-screen character at this point, right, Steve? In 05?
McMahon?
Yeah.
No, he'd been off. I can't remember exactly when he kind of went away, but he didn't reemerge till early 06 when he started messing with Shawn Michaels a lot. Is when he started.
Jesus, so, yeah.
Yeah, in the build up to Mania the next year. I think it would have started popping up around the end of 05.
This is when like he begins to get he wants to not be a thing they can just go to when ratings are down, which obviously would lead to this is, I guess that's already started. I didn't even know that. So he wasn't around really on TV at this point. Interesting.
No, because Bischoff was doing Raw. He was the de facto guy there. And I can't even remember who was doing it on SmackDown at this point. We may have already been in Teddy Long.
Not for nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, man. There's a picture of Aki Bono at this Raw, just standing triumphant as the crowd applauds him.
Wait, I just remembered when they brought him back. It was to write Bischoff out of the show in the fall of 05.
Oh, yeah.
To answer your question, Julio, I assume he would have been getting around the shows on crutches because I can't see Vince conceding to being in a wheelchair. Unless it's like on screen.
Yeah, he missed a week or two. If they were in Japan, he probably did not make that trip.
And that's
just
when Triple H.
Look at Triple H chain wrestle.
That explains a lot, actually.
Yeah, that was a sign of things to come.
Throwing shit at his TV. Julio, we go from the world of wrestling to the world of cinema. This is a film podcast, after all. It was February 7th of 2005. What was the previous weekend? What was reigning at the box office? Did Robert De Niro hold on for another week?
Well, I'll tell you this. He slipped down to number 5. Hide and Seek is number 5 on the box office for that week. Opening February 4th, we got Boogeyman, which I'm guessing is a horror movie. I've never seen it. The Wedding Date, which I think that's our boy from My Best Friend's Wedding. And
Dermot
Family
Mulroney?
Stone. Yeah, Dermot Mulroney, actually. Yeah. And who's the actress from Will and Grace?
Deborah Messing?
Deborah Messing. There you go. As you can see, they made an impression with this movie.
And 2 really good-looking people. That works for me.
Yeah, and then the Feel Good Awards, darling Hotel Rwanda also I think, expanded. I think that's another like awards expansion. So number 5, Hide and Seek with 11 million. Number 4, $1 Million Baby, slipping from 3rd to 4th, 11.70. And number 3, Ice Cube, still holding on.
God
from
bless.
2 to 3, 12 million. Number 2, For All the Jokes, The Wedding Date, made it to number 2 with 13.9 million. And then number 1, because I guess it was a horror movie, 22 million, Boogeyman. Any of you heard of Boogeyman?
I'm looking at it right now. It's produced by Sam Raimi, but
Oh, okay. That's pedigree. It's elevated horror.
oh, stop. That term didn't even exist in 2005. One of the rare cases of it used to be better. Yeah, I don't know. Lucy Lawless is in it. But aside from that, I have no idea what this is. It went on to make $70 million, so we might be talking about this again.
It was a different time. It was definitely a different time.
Steve, what was bumping in boom boxes and speakers, and people still had CD players in their car in 2005? What were they listening to?
Oh man, and if they had these same 5 songs in their 5 CD changer, because it's the exact same songs as last week in the exact same order. Number 5, Drop It Like It's Hot. Number 4, Soldier. Number 3, Lovers and Friends. Number 2, 1 2 Step, and number 1, the world champion of R&B, Mario, with Let Me Love You.
They need Sam Raimi to step in and shake things up.
Just thinking of like the person out there that was bumping Let Me Love You before they threw on The Ultimate Fighter. Like got him in the mood for it.
Maybe that was their soundtrack. Remember that it left it on while the episode was running? Like, imagine Dana's speech, how different it would come off with that backdrop. It'd be incredible.
Do you want to be a fucking dime plus 99?
So Bobby lowered the hammer indeed. We get our recap. We then get Bobby speaking retrospectively on the fight, and we see that Luden was just peppering the back of his head viciously with shots. I was pretty surprised JBA didn't call him on that. And then we get Nate Quarry, who will become like, he's like an ASMR specialist. He gets like, he's kind of far away from the camera, but his voice is just the right level of like soothing. And he's just talking about, all right, so this is just my first question here. Joe and Steve, I'll start with Steve. Does it annoy you as much as it does me when these guys refer to the fight as we got in there, our game plan? You know, it's like I talk that way about like football teams and shit like that I'm fans of. But these guys takes this shit so seriously to the point of like, it's not all of you guys in there. Luden got knocked out, not you, dumbass.
Right. I mean, Stefan was like in tears over this.
Yeah.
I was unable to get myself emotionally invested at this point because I was so distracted by Bobby's sweet UFC hoodie, which I think was the first time that had made air. And I really wanted one back then, but could not afford it. So the poor kid in me was really mourning the loss of that sweet hoodie. Yeah, they were just all hyper emotional about this. Stefan just like, that's my roommate, man. That's my friend. Gonna miss that good brother.
Did you have the Ring of Honor hoodie that was very similar to this UFC one?
I had 2. I accidentally shrunk one, so then I went and bought another one. I also had the Ring of Honor track jacket, which I was wearing when I ran into Ian Rotten at the Taco Bell he worked at.
Yes. Love it. Joe, I know it's a really weird thing to get hung up on, but that's always driven me mad. You know, Greg Jackson and Trevor Whitman, those guys are really bad about that of like, our game plan, we're going to go in and do this. We had a good fight. Does that shit annoy you like it does me?
It used to, and then, you know, once I got into the coaching game, you know, with, you know, that's the way I was sitting at Wembley watching those FTR Young Bucks matches, just pulling my hair out, you know, what are we doing? We're flying with them out there. It's just part of the game, Alex. You'll learn one day, mate. It's just, you know, you live through these guys. They're like your kids out there. You know, it is what it is.
Did you cry like like Stefan?
Always, yeah. And I often base a lot of my coaching stuff off Randy Couture because Randy's great in the sense that he really has no success to this point, but you believe every word he says. At every point, you believe in Randy, even though he's had nothing but failure in every turn at different challenges and fights and everything in between. It's incredible.
I truly believe FTR. I could hear Dax saying, when Randy's like, those guys are proud to wear the green, Circle a year and a half ago when Collision started, I could see Dax saying that, like, I'm proud to be a Collider,
No comment.
Stefan's sad. Bobby gets 5K for the finish. And the green team is down to 5. And Mike Swick just very, like, defeated. It's like, this sucks, man. We're losing, guys. And
Alex,
so
you called out that there was barely any Leben in the previous episode, so they made up for that in this one. And my first note is a quote from Leben where he says that the problem with Luden is that he showed Bobby too much respect in the ring. Was that the problem?
It definitely would have gone great if he'd have just charged at Bobby's 185 pounds, wherever he was. But yeah, he's immediately front and center here. He has reclaimed his place as the lead character of this program. And he also calls Bobby like a coward for picking a good fight, an easier fight to win. He's like, I wouldn't do that personally, not my style. But
That's leaves one to wonder, like, so he would pick people he knows he couldn't beat. Leben is like, he thinks he's dropping like these motivational quotes. He's like Michael Scott in that sense. He says shit that you like, wait a minute. And you start like thinking about the words that came out of his mouth. There is a tremendous shot of him in this episode when he's like rooting on during the team challenge that it appears he has a massive like wad of dip in his mouth. He's like, get him. It's maintaining the integrity and preserving the sanctity of the sport for sure. So with the green team down to 5, Dana pulls a meeting with Randy and Chuck. And he tells Chuck, you have till 5 o'clock to pick someone from your team to go to Randy's team. And Chuck stares up at him blankly and goes, for what? That's just it. He has to pick a member of his team to go over to Randy's to balance it out. And Chuck's not happy with it. I mean, this again, Steve, this falls in the category of, it feels like upon this rewatch, it feels like we're learning they didn't really have a plan for what this show was going to look like until they got there. They're calling it in the ring, it seems.
Yeah, and Chuck is just kind of looking dumbfounded that he has to do this. And Dana's like, well, if you don't, I'm going to let Randy pick. And Chuck's like, well, fuck that. He's not picking. Like, I'll figure it out one way or the other. But Chuck's mental capacity, I'm already questioning. The flip-flops were the first warning sign. The widening gates that you mentioned. And like you said, he's not coaching at all. He's winning on just dumb luck here. But he's under the impression that he should be rewarded for, which I understand. To me, if I wipe your team out, that's your problem. Why should I have to give up one of my guys? So I can very much see why he's frustrated, not understanding why he needs to give up somebody. But at the same time, he knows pretty much right away that he's going to drop his dead weight.
So he has that weight to drop? Because I couldn't tell. I mean, you guys know these contestants more than I do. So when he's going through the rationale, he makes it sound like everybody's a valuable part of the team. When you heard that, you were like, oh, I know exactly who I would send to Couture's team.
Yeah, the gentleman who was sent was not somebody who I had to look up who he was. Like, I did not remember much in the post-Ultimate Fighter years from that gentleman.
Yeah. He is. I mean, the way Chuck frames it is incredible because he's like, I'm sending you to Team Couture so you can work on your wrestling.
Yes.
Thanks, Chuck.
and Alex, to his credit, he's like, well, I get the best of both worlds. I get to learn some from you and some from you.
I mean, is this, because I forget, this is the only season where the guys actually just go home, right? Because they changed that immediately. By 3, it's definitely Julio. Basically, eventually it gets to the point where the guys are in the house regardless whether they win or lose. So guys can get eliminated on the first week and then just spend 8 weeks sitting in a house, miserable training, just so that the guys have people to train with. And yeah, I assume that's changed right after this. I forget though. I don't know.
I think part of it too is when we get down to the end of the season, you'll see that 1, the antics subside because there's only like 4 people in the house, and 2, I think the mentally it was more straining on guys when there's only, because it becomes basically isolation by the end of the season. Chuck also delivers this with absolutely no theater. We were talking about in one of our previous episodes that Randy knows he's on a TV show, My Two Chris's. And, he like runs down the pros and cons of keeping one person and then the other one. And Chuck just goes, this sucks. Alex, you're gone. And Julio, at this point, they're beginning to discuss, the lines are being drawn. These guys are adopting to the team model way more. And, the blue guys can't mingle with the green guys. And do you have a team preference at this point, or are you just kind of hoping everyone unites against Chris Leben?
I mean, that always, but I think that this latest plot twist really made me Team Chuck, because I thought that was bullshit, even though I've seen it happen in other reality shows and it makes sense logistically, right? Like, they need to balance things out for their stupid challenges, so they can't have a team that has less considerably lower amount of members. But Hell's Kitchen will do it. Like, it's been a while since I've watched Hell's Kitchen, but every now and then, when one of the teams is obliterating the other one, they're like, oh, well, you're no longer Team Red, you're Team Blue now, and that can add a new wrinkle to the interactions between contestants.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't seem like the kind of show where that happens. I mean, I could be surprised that maybe in future episodes, the fact that there's somebody that was in Chuck's team and is now in Randy's team, maybe that will offer some interesting television. But here, it just felt like it was unfair balancing.
Yeah. It's kind of sloppy too, right? The way they do it is kind of like, it feels very hasty and kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Also, I like Koscheck, and he is in Chuck's team. So I was like, all right. And the way this episode sets up a potential final match that would have me be Team Chuck. So
we do need to discuss the goal of Randy Couture, who is down to 5 men, is gifted a new member and says, we just got to bring him up to speed on our attitude and our program here and the way we do things on Team Couture. It's like, you may want to ask him for some advice, Randy. This ain't going great, brother. I don't know.
Well, and to have to make this adjustment so early in the season, like the first round isn't even finished yet.
Yeah.
The first round of eliminations. This would happen later. I recall one of the seasons, one team ended up with 7 and the other team only had 1. So after 8 first round fights, it makes sense if you're looking at like a tournament. But the fact that they're doing these dumbass team eliminations, that they got unbalanced so quickly, Dana just took a look around. It was like, oh shit, this isn't going to work. We got to figure something out. And like you said, the execution of this was just piss poor.
Alex Schonauer, it was weird when he showed up to training and he wanted to do the angle where he smashed out the window on the rent-a-car, and then Couture told him, we don't do that here. If you want to do that, go over to Liddell's team.
That was a low blow. That was a low blow, and I'm not getting involved in that.
So back to the desert we go. Man, our girl Willa here struggling with the instructions for this upcoming challenge. And so the idea of this is we're going in, and Leben has this little scheme he's going to hatch in which he's going to just, refuse to count the 3. He's going to just throw the challenge when it starts. He's going to sit down and lose so that he can then call out Koscheck to fight. But there's always a twist, brother. When we get there, we learn that the winning team gets to pick the upcoming fight. So, he's all pissed. Koscheck, this is where the tensions are really starting to become apparent. Koscheck and Leben are just like, talking shit, barbs back and forth. But Leben doesn't even partake in this. You would think that he would partake so he could win and pick the fight.
Right.
But they pick, who do they pick? Carrie Alexis and Nate Quarry to do an insane physical challenge here. Joe, explain to the people what these guys, I'm tripping over my words here.
Well, no, I'm with you because I'm increasingly on Williford's side here because how do you make sense of this? This is like a medicine ball obstacle course that starts with like bowling, from what I understand. I mean, that's what they started by doing. And then they have to throw them over the top of like hurdles almost. I mean, it's ridiculous. The Leben element is almost like in Lebowski, when they're going to do the handoff. I can't do that. It's not part of my plan. I mean, Leben's so proud of this plan that it is literally as simple as I throw it, I fight Josh. And it's the first hurdle. It is broken. And he's left to watch on. But yeah, that's what I mean. It's an obstacle course with a medicine ball. The bowling part of it makes for some great humour. Some of the lads just lose this challenge by being bad at bowling, which really captures the ultimate fire. But I'm with Willer on this. These things are outrageous. They're ridiculous.
Dude, Koscheck absolutely crushes this challenge. And like we were talking about in the previous episode, his experience with wrestling, he's definitely one of the better conditioned guys they have there. And this is not really a struggle for him. But Steve, did you catch when Corey is the part where you have to throw the medicine ball over like the wall? He's throwing it, running, and catching it. Like,
yes.
Just getting tired watching this.
They do the bowling, almost like a shot put / bowling combo they're doing there, because it's a 15-pound ball they're throwing in the desert. So they're running, they're launching the ball. That idiot's catching it, and then they have to take it to like a tunnel and crawl through the tunnel while pushing the medicine ball. It's a wonder they didn't have mass injuries just off these things. It's
no
like
joke.
It's like your first day of CrossFit. You have no idea what you're walking into. You're using muscles that you wouldn't normally be using. And on top of that, they're in the middle of the damn desert, exposed to that Vegas heat. So, yeah, they got lucky they didn't find themselves among the walking wounded just by participating in this hacky game show bullshit they're doing.
Julio, you are the, you're a petri dish for this, as this is all new to you. Is this part growing tiresome for you? Are you kind of getting tired of this? Because it's kind of fun in the game show aspect, but it literally does nothing to prepare them for fighting and what they're eventually going to do. The team challenges, where are you at this point? We're 4 episodes deep, so I feel you got an honest opinion about it.
Oh, dude, I absolutely tuned out this one. Like, once I realized that it was going to have basically no impact on any of the emotional plot lines going on in the show, it was like, because if it had been Leben going against Koscheck in the challenge, I'd be like, all right, well, let's watch, because there's already like some setup for this. But this is like, it's really, all that matters is who wins, like who ends up winning at the end, so that the real interesting stuff happens. And it's just so nonsensical. Once I saw what it was about, I was like, all right, I can just play with my phone until this is done. In contrast, the shenanigans at the house have really captured me to where I am really invested. Specifically, I have in all caps, please let Koscheck beat Leben's ass. And I was hoping that that's where this episode was going. I actually texted Alex. I was like, they're going to make me wait for this whole season, right? They're going to cock tease me with the Leben v. Koscheck fight. I don't know if that's going to happen. He didn't reply. He didn't give me any information, but that's what I'm watching the show for. And I am glad. I'm sure I was not alone feeling this way if you say that they got rid of the challenges, because they really have basically zero relevance besides, just picking a winner so that they can do the fight.
It would eventually become a thing that you actually did look forward to in the season, where the coaches would do a challenge, and it was the one chance for the fighters to just chill out and watch the coaches make fools of themselves, and that was fun. This is not fun for anyone, especially Willa Ford, who I again would like to sympathize with. I don't get it.
This is like Kenny Powers. Like, he's not going to be the best at exercising. These guys aren't determined to be the best at throwing a medicine ball and crawling through the desert. Damn it, they came to fight.
A reoccurring thing throughout the history of the show is always someone gets mad that they lose a challenge, and they're like, it's not the ultimate Frisbee championship. They get mad about the fact that they lost at a game as opposed to, a fight. So, yeah, Julio, they got a hot match, man. They know it, and they got to save it for the right blow off. It's, we had to wait a whole year for The Rock versus John Cena. You can wait a couple episodes for Koscheck and Leben.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you put it like that, yes, that definitely. Rock Cena always helps at giving me perspective whenever I'm getting too impatient.
There you go. So the blue team wins. Bobby Southworth coins his new catchphrase of flawless victory, which sadly does not go away. Leben and Koscheck are talking shit back and forth. Are you going to pick me, Kos? And Koscheck just with something that would end up making him a lot of money, that shit-eating grin on his face, just looking back like, Koscheck at this point, this rewatch, I'm starting to get he's kind of like the heel you're pulling for, because Leben is such an asshole that Koscheck, just when he's looking at him like, oh, I don't know, what are you going to do? It's kind of like, hell yeah, man. Fuck with that kid's head. And Chuck, takes these things way too serious. He's so happy when they win. When Randy is just kind of contemplative, and
well, I mean, he's never won so far, so we don't know.
That's true. He wins and jumps on his team's shoulders. Yes. During all this shit talk, we cut to a talking head of Forrest Griffin, in which he says Chris Leben's a monkey. That's basically the extent of his thoughts on the matter. More talking heads from Leben. where he says he's just ready to smash some cats. That's the quote I have written down here.
What is up with his voice in this episode, by the way? Chris is like, he sounds like he's on helium here. What's up with him here in this deal?
He switched from beer to liquor or something. I don't know, man.
It's fascinating.
I imagine there's still a lot of throwing up going on in these guys with the way they're pushing themselves in the gym. So who knows? So the green team meets to discuss what they think is going to happen, which fight's going to be picked. We get a surprisingly on the money They Live reference from Nate Quarry, where Leben says something offhand about giving out lollipops and ass whoopings, and then Nate Quarry just, and I'm all out of lollipops. And then the camera sits just a beat too long.
Has it been a step? I don't want to get carried away here because we're talking about MMA fighters. I think it's been established since this show that Nate Quarry is like not dumb. Correct. Am I correct? And is he the one? Did we find him?
Yeah, Julio. We'll circle back on the Nate Quarry train when we get to it, but he has an interesting story that evolves from this, and I think Joe's right. Especially when you take from the pool of people that were on The Ultimate Fighter.
Right.
Corey's like at the top of the list, man. So it's time to pick the fight. Blue team picks Diego Sanchez to fight Alex Karalexis. Diego's rationale for this is that Karalexis swears and he doesn't want him in the house anymore. Steve, I don't know if we could draw from memory a more over-the-top caricature of a guy from Boston than Alex Karalexis.
Well, a couple notes here. One, Chuck announces this fight with the same passion as me placing my Taco Bell order. Yeah, the 2 burritos, man. I'm good. He's like, oh, yeah, Diego's going to fight. It'll be all right. And then they cut to our cousin from Boston, who is just that accent. He's perpetually on his way to dunk.
Got my donkeys. Dude, if he was casting The Departed, Scorsese would have been like, dial it in, man. You're a bit over the top here. Come on now.
But then Diego's like in his face, like, I'm going to murder you. I'm going to end your life. I'm the best man that ever lived. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, he's like laughing at him. And then Karalexis does have a good comeback. He's like, that's the first complete sentence you've said since you've been here.
He's kind of beast in that regard. I knew where it was going fight-wise, but I was watching him. He's kind of, he had a good showing at least, responding to Diego's insane attempts at trash talk. So
there are people whose quirks make me want to fight them. So if that happens to be the quirk that sets Diego off, and I think that the show, if anything, has made a decent job of establishing as a guy who, like, I don't think that he's putting on a show for this. Like, I think he's generally bothered by this guy. On the other hand, I think that the show failed at building this up in a way to where, like, it seems to come out of nowhere. Have we even had any other moments between these two guys in the previous 3 episodes? If he was fighting, what's his name? Stefan, because they had that big clash about the asparagus.
You think this is about asparagus?
Yeah. That would make sense, right? But it almost feels like, have they ever interacted? Like, there's no way that there's no footage of them not, of them interacting in a way that would build up to this fight. So it almost feels like it's being like written there on the spot. I mean, even like the guys, Alex's kind of underreaction to Diego's boasting, like that feels like, yeah, he's almost as surprised as we are that he got picked by Diego.
Diego's doing a nightmare promo, like he's on an 80s wrestling show.
Now, if you look at the season as like a fight card, this is almost like a throwaway undercard fight to buy time for the people wanting to see Leben-Koscheck. Because even as they are kind of getting in each other's faces, you cut to Leben-Koscheck in the kitchen.
Yes.
And Chris is like, I'm going to kill you, man. It's just going to happen. You just call the fight so we can get it over with. Quit being a bitch.
And again, Koscheck's just doing that thing where he's just like laughing at him, and it's clearly driving Leben insane. It's wonderful.
Again, I know you've already seen this, so you know how it pans out. But as you were watching, do you remember rooting for one or the other?
Alex and I are in a similar spot on this. I think I did the 182 here. I watched this after seeing both guys in the UFC, and both guys' image in the UFC was that Leben was like a fan favorite brawler, and Josh Koscheck's gimmick in the UFC was that he was like an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of watching it now. There's no way you could watch this and be like, man, go Leben. Like he's insufferable in this show.
I didn't watch the episode. I didn't watch these in real time. I picked up with the next episode.
Okay.
And having that as my exposure, I was firmly Team Leben, which
there you go.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it's the art of storytelling hooked me in for that one, boys.
Given Carol Alexis's, demographic, his location, it's very possible he'd call Diego a slur at some point in this, and they just cut that from the show. But who's to say, really?
Oh, should have bleeped it. Yeah, give us some context.
Man, yeah, this is, I was laughing out loud at how badly Carol Alexis no-sells Diego's shit talk. It's even funnier considering how the fight plays out. But, like Joe said, Diego thinks he's doing like local market promos. He's like, this Sunday in Tempe, Arizona. And Carol Alexis is just like, are the Sox playing? What are we doing? And
I don't go with the flow. I flow with the go.
Oh, yeah. Diego has to show his knowledge by quoting Hickson Gracie later in this. Star of The Incredible Hulk, Hickson Gracie, the Ed Norton one. Hickson Gracie is the guy who teaches him how to breathe. Like when he's doing all those weird tricks with his abdomen and stomach. That's legendary, more mythical than legendary, I would say, because most of his fights aren't documented or proven that they actually happened. But he's like a god to these folks. Dana White does say come Tuesday. He goes, come Tuesday. And for the life of me, Steve, I can't remember who's the wrestler that people memed for come Tuesday.
It was the Beverly Brothers' son. God, I can't remember the big Cro-Magnon looking kid. I can't remember his name. Von Wagner? Was that it?
Von Wagner, yes. We got there in the end. Team effort.
Julio, this wrestler just said, come Tuesday. I like that idea. And people just clipped it. Now, I don't even know if that dude's still in NXT, but that clip has lived in infamy. So Dana drops the come Tuesday. Alex Karalexis shaves his body.
Wait, there's an important detail there. He says out loud, I was a landscaper. And then it cuts to him manscaping. he's trained with the shears. He knows his way around a bush.
That was when I realized this episode was a little slim on content. After the full Leben-Koscheck, they went to that. I was like, oh, well, okay.
But yeah, Julio, I think he explains this, but the idea is shave down so that if you're in submissions, you can slip out more easily. So we learned that Diego's hip has been giving him troubles, and this is when we're talking about like the $5,000 they get for finishing it, and Diego reveals that he can't afford to get an MRI, and so they send him to their gimmick doctor there, and he processes the information that the doctor tells him and says, you're going to need surgery to fix this. It appears to be a tear, and Diego just goes, well, some of my roommates have Celebrex. Can you give me some of that? And the doctor's just like, he knows he's being on camera. He's just like, well, Diego, have you been a good boy? Do you need your candies?
To be fair,
did not remember this.
Celebrex is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medicine. It's essentially jacked up, like the same class as ibuprofen, just more like a clinical grade of that. So it's not like he was asking him for Vicodins.
It's a gateway drug.
Yeah.
Well, when the camera stopped, he started asking him for Oxy. He was like,
I'm sure of it.
And
so this is a shameless attempt, I guess, at making Diego a little more sympathetic. Did it work on you guys? Were you suddenly
Absolutely
like,
not. No.
This poor guy needs health insurance?
I mean, that can be true alongside all the other things that he does in this episode that make him just sort of a baffling character. Yeah, it didn't work for me.
We find out that he has a kid coming too in the midst of all this. He's like, I need hip surgery. I don't have insurance. I'm about to be a father. I'm starting fights in a house over asparagus.
That's the scariest thing he says in the whole episode. That's the nightmare right there, bro.
Any sympathy I could possibly conjure up for him is immediately erased when he says, I'm going to send him back to preschool because I'm the teacher.
We're going to learn about shapes and colors.
He's trying his best.
During this, we get some clips of Carol Alexis training, and Randy's reviewing the strategy for the fight with him. And I guess Randy's wearing like briefs or maybe, Speedo cut supporter or something, but he's also wearing his Team Couture jersey, which droops down over whatever he's wearing. So he appears completely naked underneath his jersey. It's like, it just cuts to Randy looking like Winnie the Pooh talking about, the strategy in the fight.
He's in his night shirt.
Yeah. It's day 19. It's fight time. Diego comes out. 23 years old, 12-0. Alex Karalexis, 28, 4-0. He promises that he's going to hit hard, and he does not.
As they make their way to the cage, there's 5 minutes and 40 seconds left in the show where they call for the opening bell.
Yep.
Joe, you want to give us a play-by-play of what happens in this fight?
I can. Before I do, though, I would like to call out Dana White's incredible explanation of middleweights, in which he says they have knockout power like the heavyweights, but they're faster and more exciting. And then it cuts to these two fellas who are like 5'8" each, tiny dudes. They're not middleweights at all. They're just for the sake of the show. And that, I think, gives you an idea of the legitimacy and believability of Dana White. But the fight, unfortunately, is not much of a fight. Immediate takedown. And eventually gets to mount. He takes the back. He sprinkles in some ground and pound, which they appear to add like punch sound effects on. Did you guys feel the same way? It was this sort of strange, because the audio for the fights is weird because there's no commentary, right? So you just have the coaches and the teams yelling. There was some interesting sounds of some of these punches from Diego. Ultimately gets the choke, and we cut to a very demoralized Randy the Natural Couture, who explains that, well, Alex doesn't have much of a ground game, so really it is what it is. But yeah, this is a very one-sided fight.
Julio, with what little you know about MMA, was this apparent to you that one guy absolutely got his ass whooped?
Yes. Yeah. it was domination from the beginning. I thought that maybe the show was going to play with our expectations, where right in the first fight, Bobby was the favorite and he won. So now going in, Diego was probably the favorite to win and he would lose. Maybe Alex actually had a trick up his sleeve, but this is not the movies. This is real life. So the guy that was likely to win won very easily. I'll ask you what I asked you last episode. The finish, like the way that he wins, artful, like do you give it a thumbs up or just kind of like a shrug?
I mean, it was a well-executed choke. No can defend from Alexis there. There's nothing you can do. And then fortunately, we have Dana White explaining what a rear naked choke is right after this.
No, just what we needed.
The only thing that would have made it better would have been if he put on a lab coat.
Yeah. It was funny that I kind of forgot Diego's rep as like a killer ground game guy, because as time would go on, there would become like really elite grapplers would emerge in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole episode, they tell you about like his ground and pound, his control, and it reveals itself in the first fight. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was like a dream for them. No pun intended. But as we'll see throughout the show, like they really did have like a guy they could market as a killer, and they tried to for his run that followed the show. The Nightmare wins. Bobby Southworth, flawless victory. And the green team is just standing there like they just got some bad test results back, man. It's just completely a sad time for the green team. So to recap, Alex Schonauer has traded Team Couture as part of a team reshuffle. Team Liddell wins the middleweight challenge and the opportunity to schedule the next fight. They choose Diego Sanchez to fight Alexis. Diego defeats Alex Alexis by submission at 147 of the first round. A very light episode, as Joe called out, but we get on the next episode. And for those who have seen this before or remember, I think there's a reason this one was light on content, because the next two episodes that follow are almost sensory overload.
Oh no.
Something to keep you very excited. Did you watch the preview for the next episode, Julio?
I didn't. I always skip out before, not just this show, any show. I'll just skip. I already know I'm going to watch the next one, so you don't have to sell it to me.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, like, the main thing to keep you on the hook for the next episode is that we get to see Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture's going out on the town outfits, because everyone's going out to have dinner together, and the style of the mid-2000s will be very much alive. Where are you at this point, Julio? Besides the anti-Leben bandwagon that you're on, is there anyone in particular you're pulling for, or anyone that you're interested on where their story is going to go?
I mean, I want Koscheck to be the one that beats Leben now. They've narrowed it down. They built it up, so I want that to be paid off. I want some sort of acknowledgement that Team Couture is not doing well. Like, they seem to... I mean, we're seeing it happen with our own eyes, but I don't think the show has really done anything to where they acknowledge, man, maybe Randy's not a good coach.
He always seems to have the answers. At what point do the questions match the answers? That's the question, you know?
Yeah. it's not that I like Diego, but I find him an interesting presence on the show.
Yes.
So I'm hoping that he sticks around because I want to see that clash. I was talking about a different reality show with some friends, and they were like, why do you like the drama? And I'm like, because that's what keeps me watching. Like, it's, I can enjoy people on screen without wanting them to be the winners. I just like them because they make things interesting. And so people like Diego, even somebody like Leben, like I completely dislike him, but I like what he does with the show, which is like, it keeps it interesting. It's not everybody just singing everybody else's praises, so.
It stood out to me. I wanted to ask you, Julio, like, as someone who knows where a lot of these guys end up, I'm kind of stunned how, to me anyway, I think they've done a pretty poor job of like fleshing out who the rest of these guys are. I feel like we talked about Kenny Florian in the first couple episodes. Was he in the house for these episodes? A bunch of guys are not even.
I spotted him once. Because I was like, there he is, BattleBots.
I mean, I get it. Like, if they're not doing anything interesting, then it is what it is. But it kind of feels like it limits your ability to invest in some of the other fights, right?
Absolutely. But I mean, that is what makes the fight interesting, though. Whatever they manage to drum up as far as their backstory. I was like, this is what's happening with these guys, as we go into the fight. It's not just who wins or who loses, but what happens if they win, what happens if they lose. And they've done a decent enough job so far for me because I don't know anything. And so for me to care about Bobby and Ludun like going in, for me to care about Diego and Alex going in, I mean, they did something right, even though I can tell you it's creaky because, like I said, I'd never seen Diego and Alex interact before this episode, at least not that I remember. So it gets better. I mean, that happens with every reality show. It gets better once they start weeding out some people and you can just focus on just the core
there was a cut to Josh Rafferty, like a talking head. I was like, oh, I forgot this guy was on the show.
Yeah. Same.
And Steve, I don't even know if Sam Hoger, I think he was there just to film like the last few episodes.
Sam Hoger, as far as I know, he was off playing AC Slater in the Lifetime Saved by the Bell movie while he was also doing this. Just completely inconsequential to anything on this show so far.
Joey, we're a third done with the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. Any big things that stick out to you that you didn't recall? We've done the 180 on the Leben-Koscheck dynamic, but so far into the show, for myself, like the team challenges, I just forgot, one, how ridiculous they were, and also just seemingly pointless. Is there anything that stuck out to you so far you found surprising?
I definitely would co-sign the challenges. I would say that the form of one Randy Couture has made me question a lot of things. Kind of reappraisal, I think, needs to be done on him as a coach here with 2005 Ultimate Fighter run that he had. But, I mean, the broad thing is, I think it is genuinely interesting how kind of jumbled their idea of what they're trying to express or explain the UFC as being on this show. There are consistent attempts to do the kind of warrior thing that we've become more and more used to. And then it's paired with, like, just dumb, trashy TV, as well as we mentioned throughout the shows, these challenges that make no. So it's like, for, each episode being, whatever, 40 minutes without the ads, there's like 4 different identities that the UFC is trying to merge at once. And that's what stood out to me most. I think it's a pretty bad TV show, but I mean, I enjoy watching it because I go back to it, nostalgia and shame. It's an interesting combination. That's what this show is.
Steve, in closing here, we are wrestling fans after all. That's what has brought us all together. And a massive part of this show's success was the idea that it followed Raw and kind of stole some of the WWF's audience. When you watch this back now, 20 years later, to me, it's kind of obvious how embedded like the idea of these pro wrestling storylines in it is. Do you think that was intentional, or do you think they just kind of stumbled upon, for lack of a better term, gold?
I think each week they are leaning more and more into it. And next week, not to get too far ahead, but that's why I tuned in. I heard Meltzer describe it as the most pro wrestling television he'd seen outside of a wrestling show. So I'm like, all right, I need to get tuned into this and see what they're doing. They've done a great job building, at first subtly, the heat between Koscheck and Leben, and now this episode we just did, really leaning into establishing that these two are rivals and they're going to collide at some point. Keep tuning in, and we will give you a bite of that carrot. So yeah, they're doing an exceptional job with what was a slow build and will soon to be a very accelerated build from here.
Worked on Julio, that's for sure.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for listening to this episode of TUFtwenty. A reminder to subscribe to the podcast, visit wearethecontrarians.com, and follow the Contrarians across social media @Contrarian Prime.
You can also follow Alex individually at Contrarian Alex, and you can check out our other special projects on our Patreon channel at patreon.com/contrarianprime. If you want to listen to Alex teach me about The Rock and John Cena, that's where you need to go.
You can catch me weekly on the Late Night Grin, live and free on YouTube every Friday night. In addition, Alex and I collaborate monthly on Grin Grappler, discussing some of pro wrestling's biggest and baddest. If those grins are for you, check out LNG Gold, a YouTube membership plan that includes over 50 hours of exclusive content each month.
You can follow me on Twitter and on Blue Sky at NotDrDeath. That's NotDrDeath. Or you can block me now and save us both a lot of embarrassment.
Until next time, be sure to make your coaches proud and don't call anyone a fatherless bastard.